never imagined that moving in with my stepbrother would completely upend my life. My name is Ryan, an ordinary 20-year-old college student trying to balance studies, part-time work, and a normal social life. But ordinary has a funny way of slipping through your fingers when the people around you are anything but ordinary. It all started a few months ago when my mom remarried. My new stepfather had a daughter, Amber, from his previous marriage, a confident, playful girl who seemed to have a permanent mischievous glint in her eye. Amber had a brother too, Jake, who was only a year older than me but already a blend of charm, teasing energy, and reckless confidence. Moving into this blended household was supposed to be an adjustment, a quiet learning curve, yet it quickly became a whirlwind of challenges I hadn't anticipated. I've always had a private side, something I never shared with anyone, not friends, not family, certainly not Amber or Jake. There's a part of me that enjoys the thrill of dressing up in feminine clothes. Not for anyone else, not as a fetish, but as a personal exploration, a secret world where I could experiment with identity and style, something playful yet profoundly freeing. But I never imagined it would intersect with my everyday life so explosively. The house we moved into was spacious, modern, and meticulously arranged. Each room reflected the personality of its occupant. Amber's was a riot of color and fashion magazines, Jake's a mix of sports trophies and gaming posters, and my room, well, mine was a quiet, neutral space that hid the clutter of my secret interests. It was cozy, but never truly mine. Every time I locked the door behind me, I could transform this space into my private haven, carefully arranging outfits, shoes, and makeup in ways that let me become someone else entirely, even if only for a few hours. Amber and Jake, however, were unpredictable. They seemed to have a sixth sense for discovering secrets, for prying into spaces where they had no business being. Jake, in particular, had a curious energy, always pushing boundaries, always daring me into situations I wouldn't normally entertain. At first, his dares were harmless. Pranks, small embarrassing challenges at home, a harmless trick or two on friends. But over time, his dares grew more intricate, more personal, and this is where my secret world intersected dangerously with reality. I had a girlfriend, Emma, back in my college town, someone who understood me in ways few did. Our relationship was steady, affectionate, but limited by distance and the demands of school. Emma didn't know about my crossdressing explorations, and I was determined to keep it that way. The thought of her discovering Lila, my girlish persona, filled me with a mixture of thrill and fear. What if she rejected this side of me? What if she saw me differently? These questions always lingered, a shadow I couldn't shake. It was a quiet Friday evening when the dare began. Jake leaned against the doorway of my room, smirking, eyes glinting with that infuriating combination of challenge and amusement. "Hey, Orion," he said casually, yet the tone carried the weight of mischief. "I dare you to spend the entire weekend as my girlish twin. Clothes, makeup, the whole deal. Can you do it?" I blinked, caught between shock, curiosity, and panic. "What? You're insane." My voice wavered, unsure if I was defending Ryan or the part of me that secretly craved an excuse to become Lila again. Jake shrugged, the smirk never leaving his face. "It's just a dare. If you do it, I don't know, maybe give you a pass on chores for the week. Or at least let Amber plan your wardrobe for Monday. What's the worst that could happen?" Emma's face flashed in my mind, her reaction, her judgment, and yet beneath that fear, a pulse of excitement surged. Dressing as Lila was something I loved in secret, a thrill I could never justify openly. And now, with Jake's dare, I was being offered the perfect, if humiliating, opportunity. The first moments were the hardest. Standing in my room, clutching the skirt Jake had tossed on the bed, I felt every nerve in my body ignite with tension. I wasn't just dressing up. I was stepping into a persona that existed only in private, now exposed to scrutiny and challenge. The feel of the fabric, soft and unfamiliar against my skin, sent shivers up my spine. I caught my reflection in the mirror, Lila peeking out from behind Ryan's eyes, uncertain but eager. The transformation wasn't just physical. As I applied makeup, Tracing the delicate lines of eyeliner, mascara, and subtle blush, I could feel the shift within me. Confidence, curiosity, and nervous excitement intertwined. The heels went on next, the unfamiliar height forcing me to adjust my posture, to balance between awkwardness and grace. Each step toward Lila was a step away from the security of being Ryan, a step deeper into vulnerability and thrill. By the time I emerged from my room, Jake and Amber were both watching. Amber clapped her hands, delighting in the spectacle. Jake raised an eyebrow, impressed despite himself. "Not bad," he said. "You actually look like my twin." Panic and exhilaration collided in me. Lila existed fully now, visible to the world, or at least to the people who had always teased, challenged, and tested me. Emma's face lingered in my mind, a reminder of the consequences of exposure, while Jake's stare made me question how far I could push this duality. And just like that, my ordinary life had twisted into something unpredictable. A weekend of dares, of transformation, and of tension stretched before me. The house, once a place of comfort, now felt like a stage. Every hallway, every mirror, every interaction carried the potential for discovery and chaos. I was Lila now, walking the line between secret thrill and looming exposure. The night settled around us, but the challenge had only begun. I could feel it in my chest, the pulse of anticipation, the whisper of excitement, the fear of being caught. This was more than a dare. It was a test of identity, courage, and the delicate balance between who I was and who I could become. Tomorrow, the real challenge would begin, and I had no idea if I was ready. The weekend began with a strange, electric tension in the house. Ryan, or rather Lila, felt it in every corner, every creaking floorboard, every glance from Amber and Jake. The dare wasn't just about dressing up. It was about performing, about stepping fully into a role that made him simultaneously exhilarated and terrified. The first challenge came almost immediately. Amber, bubbling with excitement, insisted on helping Lila choose outfits for the day. She piled skirts, blouses, and dresses onto the bed in a chaotic rainbow of color. "No jeans. We're going full twin vibes," she exclaimed. Lila's heart raced as fingers brushed fabrics, textures soft and unfamiliar against his skin. There was no hiding now. Every choice was visible, every movement noticed. Jake hovered nearby, arms crossed, smirking with the kind of amusement that only older brothers or mischievous stepbrothers could muster. "Better not mess it up," he said, a teasing warning that made Lila straighten in instinctive defense. The internal struggle was immediate, excitement battling anxiety. The thrill of being seen as Lila clashed with the fear of being judged, of being laughed at, of Emma somehow finding out. As Lila struggled with the first outfit, a pastel skirt with a fitted blouse, Amber ran her hands over accessories. "Earrings, necklace, hair bow. Come on, you have to look the part." The mirror reflected a version of himself he rarely allowed to surface, a mix of hesitation and budding confidence. Applying makeup became a ritual of transformation, every stroke of blush and eyeliner blending Ryan into Lila, body language softening, movements adopting feminine grace. The process was intimate, nerve-wracking, and intoxicating. Every sound in the house felt magnified. The creak of the stairs, the distant hum of the refrigerator, even the faint tick of the clock felt like the drumbeat of suspense. Lila tiptoed through the rooms, heels clicking against polished floors, aware that one misstep could reveal the secret world he had carefully kept hidden. Yet, each step brought a surge of confidence, a quiet thrill that he couldn't deny. The dare escalated when Jake suggested a mini, twin test around the house. Lila had to interact with Amber as if they were actual twins, mirroring her expressions, gestures, and tone. Lila's heart pounded as he followed Amber through the kitchen, awkwardly mimicking her movements, struggling to keep balance in heels. The task was humiliating, thrilling, and strangely liberating. Each stumble and forced smile intensified the emotional stakes. Lunch was another battleground. Amber insisted Lila sit at the table wearing the full outfit, carefully arranging his hair and accessories. Conversations were filled with light teasing from Amber and pointed glances from Jake. Lila's internal dialogue swung wildly. Panic at exposure clashed with the exhilaration of embodying a persona he rarely shared. The mirror in the dining room reflected a perfect image of Lila, but inside, Ryan's insecurities roiled. As the afternoon wore on, the emotional tension grew. Lila wandered through the house, moving from room to avoid too much scrutiny, yet each movement heightened awareness. The feeling of fabric against his skin, the click of heels on the floor, the subtle brush of hair against his face, all combined into a sensory symphony that anchored him in the transformation. Every glance in the mirror became a confrontation between who he was and who he was pretending to be. Jake introduced a twist, a mini photo challenge. Lila had to pose as Amber's twin for a series of photos, each more elaborate than the last. Amber positioned him, adjusted his posture, and snapped pictures with an almost professional intensity. Each click of the camera was a test, a silent gauge of vulnerability, forcing Lila to maintain the facade even as laughter and embarrassment bubbled up inside. The images captured more than appearance. They captured the tension, the thrill, and the delicate balance of identity Lila navigated. Evening brought the hardest test yet, a short video call with a few mutual friends. Amber suggested Lila join the call, fully dressed, acting as her twin. Panic surged. Exposure wasn't just possible, it was imminent. Yet, the allure of performance, the strange joy in being Lila in front of others, pushed him forward. Hands trembling, he adjusted his hair, checked his makeup, and stepped into the living room. The camera framed him, and a deep breath steadied his nerves. Lila's voice, softer and more melodic, emerged, a perfect mirror of Amber's tone. The call was brief but intense, each moment a crucible of anxiety and exhilaration. Throughout the day, Lila experienced a whirlwind of emotions: shame, thrill, vulnerability, and empowerment all interwoven. Every misstep, every giggle from Amber, every teasing remark from Jake forced him to navigate a labyrinth of identity, secrecy, and performance. By nightfall, he was exhausted but strangely elated. The dare had pushed him further than he ever imagined, forcing him to confront fears, embrace hidden desires, and explore a side of himself that was simultaneously private and public. The night's quiet brought reflection. Alone in his room, Lila looked in the mirror, heels kicked aside, skirt slightly wrinkled, makeup softened by the day's exertions. The reflection wasn't just a costume, it was a revelation. Identity was fluid, playful, and sometimes terrifyingly exposed. Tomorrow promised new challenges, new tests, and deeper transformations. But in that moment, Lila allowed himself a private smile, a small acknowledgement of courage and curiosity. The build-up wasn't just about clothing or makeup. It was about emotional resilience, the thrill of secrecy, and the delicate art of balancing fear with desire. Each interaction, each test, each step in heels was a thread in a complex tapestry of suspense, drama, and transformation. Lila was no longer just Ryan hiding behind a door. He was a living, breathing persona navigating a world of dares, teasing, and identity exploration, with every heartbeat echoing the tension of what could happen if the secret were ever exposed. The next day felt like walking a tightrope over an endless abyss. Lila, my secret persona, had become more than a playful experiment. She was now an identity under scrutiny, with every glance and every whispered word carrying the weight of discovery. Amber and Jake seemed to sense it, their teasing sharper, their pranks more daring, pushing me to the edge of my comfort and patience. It began with Jake entering my room early in the morning, a mischievous glint in his eyes. "Ready for today's ultimate twin test?" he asked, tossing a new outfit onto the bed. Lila's heart sank, a delicate pink dress with frills and lace, shoes that clicked with every step, and a wig styled perfectly to match Amber's. My fingers trembled as I lifted the fabric. Every brush against my skin sent shivers through me. I was exhilarated and terrified in equal measure. Amber appeared behind him, clapping her hands. "And you'll have to act as my twin for the entire day. No slipping back into Ryan. If anyone notices, well, that's part of the dare. Her voice carried both excitement and subtle menace. I swallowed hard, aware that this was no longer a playful game. It was a test of endurance, secrecy, and courage. The first obstacle arose within the hour. The doorbell rang, an unexpected visitor, our neighbor, looking for Amber. Panic surged. Could I maintain the illusion? I adjusted the wig, smoothed the dress, and tried to adopt Amber's usual cheerfulness. Hi. I'm, Amber, I said, voice slightly higher, trembling. The neighbor squinted, tilting her head in suspicion, but Amber swooped in from the hallway, saving the moment. The relief was immediate, but the anxiety lingered, a reminder that exposure could come at any moment. Midday brought the most daring challenge yet, a trip to the local cafe, where Jake insisted Lila act as Amber in public. My palms were slick with sweat as we walked down the street, heels clicking against the pavement, every passerby a potential judge. The thrill of performing in public merged with terror, every reflection in a window, every accidental glance in a mirror, magnified my dual identity. Lila's persona was no longer confined to a private room. She was alive, visible, and vulnerable. Inside the cafe, Amber guided me to a table near the window. Act natural, she whispered. Smile, nod, laugh like me. I forced a delicate smile, mimicking her gestures, trying to appear effortless. Jake's eyes gleamed with amusement, observing every flinch, every falter. Then came the twist. A classmate from college spotted me, raising an eyebrow. My stomach dropped. Could I maintain the disguise? The adrenaline surged, my heart pounding, as I executed a perfect laugh, mimicked Amber's posture, and navigated the conversation without slipping. The close call left me trembling, aware of how fragile my dual life truly was. Returning home, the tension didn't abate. Jake and Amber escalated the dare further, introducing a series of tasks designed to test my control and secrecy. Makeup touch-ups, outfit changes, and photo sessions, each a deliberate push against my comfort zone. Every mirror became a battleground, every reflection a confrontation between Ryan and Lila. I felt exposed, exhilarated, and anxious simultaneously. Then came the symbolic moment. While adjusting my wig in front of the bedroom mirror, I stumbled. One lock of hair fell across my cheek, a minor mishap that instantly sent a surge of panic through me. Jake entered at that precise moment, smirking at the slip. Careful, twin, he teased. Don't let Amber or anyone else see. The moment crystallized the stakes. Lila's existence was a delicate balance, every detail critical, every misstep potentially catastrophic. Evening brought the final and most intense challenge. Amber suggested a private video for a social media challenge she had been planning. Lila had to record herself, acting as Amber's twin, with Jake supervising. My hands shook as I held the camera, trying to project confidence, elegance, and charm, all while internally battling fear and exhilaration. The recording captured the duality of my existence, the composed, playful Lila on screen, and the anxious, self-conscious Ryan beneath the surface. The climax reached its peak when Emma unexpectedly called. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, and for a moment, time seemed to freeze. Could I answer without revealing Lila? Heart racing, I muted the phone, adrenaline flooding every nerve. The possibility of Emma discovering my secret now loomed like a shadow over every decision, every movement. The suspense was unbearable, each second stretching into an eternity. Jake and Amber, sensing the tension, exchanged knowing glances. Looks like your secret's in danger, Jake teased, grinning. Better keep your twin persona perfect. I nodded, swallowing hard, aware that the weekend's dare had become more than a game. It was a crucible, testing my identity, courage, and secrecy to the absolute limit. By the time night fell, I was exhausted, my body aching from heels, my mind racing with anxiety, excitement, and exhilaration. I sat in front of the mirror, the dress slightly wrinkled, makeup softened from the day's exertions, and hair tousled. Lila's reflection stared back at me, perfectly poised and yet vulnerable. Ryan's heartbeat echoed in the quiet room, a reminder of who I was beneath the performance. Every step, every glance, every interaction had heightened the stakes. The dare had transformed me physically and emotionally, revealing both the thrill and the peril of living a secret life so vividly. And yet, the weekend wasn't over. Somewhere in the house, the potential for discovery, embarrassment, and revelation still lingered, a constant, tantalizing threat. The climax left me on edge, caught between identity and exposure, thrill and fear. Lila existed fully now, but the weekend's final hour promised a revelation that could change everything. The suspense was unbearable, the stakes higher than ever. And in the quiet of the night, as I stared at my reflection, I realized that the weekend's dare was far from over. It was only just beginning. The house was quiet now, the kind of silence that feels heavy, charged with the weight of unspoken possibilities. Lila sat on the edge of the bed, legs crossed in the soft sway of her heels, hands clutching the hem of her frilly skirt. The mirror across the room reflected her carefully constructed image, flawless makeup, hair styled perfectly, and the delicate posture of a girl who belonged entirely to the twin persona. And yet, beneath the reflection, Ryan's pulse thundered, a constant reminder that this was a borrowed identity, thrilling but fragile. The phone buzzed again.
Emma.
My heart skipped. One glance at the screen sent a jolt of panic racing through me. Could I answer without slipping? The temptation to hide, to retreat to Ryan, was overwhelming, yet the stakes demanded Lila's presence. The dare had become more than a weekend game. It was now a test of secrecy and courage, and one wrong move could unravel everything. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Amber, sensing the tension, whispered from behind, "Don't let your guard down." Jake's probably watching too. I froze. Every creak of the floorboards, every distant hum of the house, felt like a countdown to exposure. My hands tightened around the skirt, trembling with a mixture of fear, excitement, and anticipation. The thrill of living as Lila, so fully and publicly, was intoxicating, but so was the terror of being caught. A shadow moved across the doorway.
Jake.
His smirk was unreadable, teasing yet sharp, a reminder of how carefully every move had to be measured. "Ready for the final part of the dare?" he asked casually, though his tone carried the weight of challenge. I nodded, swallowing hard. One step, one misstep, could shift everything from thrilling experiment to catastrophic reveal. Amber appeared beside him, her eyes gleaming with mischief and curiosity. "It's your turn to perform solo," she said softly. "Show us the perfect twin." My stomach twisted. Alone, visible, scrutinized, I had to act to maintain the delicate illusion. Lila's movements became precise, deliberate. Every tilt of the head, every flutter of eyelashes, every careful sway of the hips was measured to perfection. The mirror reflected not just a girl, but a persona crafted from hours of anxiety, thrill, and vulnerability. Then came the sound that made my blood run cold. The front door opening. Footsteps, casual and familiar, moving through the hallway toward my room.
Emma.
My chest tightened. The carefully constructed world of Lila teetered on the edge of collapse. Could I hide? Could I shift back to Ryan? Could I maintain control under the weight of her gaze? The questions pounded with the force of inevitability. I crouched slightly behind the desk, Lila frozen in the reflection, Ryan racing through every possible escape. The footsteps drew closer, each step a drumbeat against my heart. Amber's whispered warning barely registered. My focus was entirely on the approaching threat. Emma's shadow fell across the hallway, then paused. A soft knock. The house seemed to hold its breath. My mind raced. Should I answer? Pretend to be Amber's twin?
Retreat?
Every instinct screamed conflicting commands, each one tangled with fear, thrill, and desire. The room felt impossibly small, the mirror suddenly a window into both my bravest and most vulnerable self. Lila's persona was complete, yet Ryan's presence trembled just beneath the surface, ready to shatter the delicate illusion. Emma's voice called softly from the hallway a simple, "Hey, are you there?" Each syllable echoed like a challenge, a temptation, a test. I swallowed, heart pounding, caught between revelation and secrecy, between exposure and the thrill of maintaining control. The mirror reflected the duality, the perfect, poised Lila staring back, while Ryan's racing mind plotted every possible outcome. The moment stretched, suspended in time. The dare, the transformation, the twin persona, all converged at the precipice of exposure. And in that instant, I realized something crucial. No matter what happened next, nothing would ever be the same. The boundaries between Ryan and Lila had blurred irrevocably, and the next second could tip the balance entirely. Then a shadow moved closer. A hand on the doorknob. The sound of a breath, a pause, and a faint creak as the door began to open. Lila froze. Ryan's pulse hammered. Amber and Jake held their breaths just outside, unseen but present. And Emma, unknowingly, was about to step into a room where nothing was as it seemed. The story ends here, suspended on the edge of revelation. Did Emma discover the secret? Would she see Lila for who she was, or laugh, judge, or accept? The possibilities are endless, the suspense unbearable, and the audience is left holding their breath alongside me. What would you do if you were in Lila's shoes? How would you maintain a secret identity under such pressure? Comment your predictions. Do you think Emma will discover the truth, or will Lila manage to keep the twin persona intact?